James Nixon joins us from Societe Generale in London. James, good noon to you.
Good afternoon, Tom.
What do we need to know right now? There's this headline, that headline, back and forth and back and forth. What's the thing you're focused on right now with Greece?
Well, the immediate thing is that we have a significant financing need for Greece over the next couple of years. And what we're really looking for is the Europeans to agree basically a new bailout package that will cover Greece for the next 3 years. So that's the immediate need for the next 24 hours.
I like that. Let's bring up a chart, the 2-year yield, and you can see the litmus paper here, folks, out 24 months as we go from 2, 3, 4% up near 25, 26% on the Greece 2-year note. And yet I read off the Bloomberg, James Nixon, protests over austerity. Has anybody bothered to ask the Greek people if they want to do this?
Well, I think that's the real challenge. I mean, obviously the news today is very much focused on what's happening in Brussels with the Eurogroup meeting. But in many ways, I think the sort of the heat that we saw earlier in the week with the sort of tension between the ECB and Germany, that has to a certain extent died down. And as you rightly point out, the real risk now is very much what's happening on the ground in Greece.
Thank you. I'm glad you meant, that's where I wanted to go with this. I mean, at the ultimate point of responsibility, it's about a people taking responsibility, isn't it?
Well, I think you have to acknowledge that they've already made enormous efforts. I mean, we've seen, for example, last year they cut the total fiscal spending by about 8% of GDP, and that's almost unheard of for a modern economy, going through these kind of problems. So that already was a huge effort. But I mean, the point is, it's not enough. They need to do exactly the same again this year, and probably will have to do a very similar amount the year after. And that's the real challenge. As you say, that's a lot to ask the people to swallow.
Yeah. Let's bring up this chart. We showed it a couple weeks ago. Thanks for the emails on. It's a 4-year 16-quarter moving average. That's Greek GDP just rolling over through zero. And you can see even the 4-year moving average of Greece output is below zero. I've never seen that chart. I'm going to assume, James Nixon, you've never seen that. This sustained fiscal drag, we're really in new territory, aren't we, here, with a people, a public, having to put up with these policies.
Well, I think that's probably right. I mean, when we look back at previous sort of debt crises, Argentina is the country that most easily comes to mind. I mean, eventually, basically, the pain gets too much, and you see the country cut and run. So they depreciate their currency and inflate their way back into growth. And what happens is very quickly, basically, the economy returns to a growth path. The problem in Greece is that none of those policy options are available because they're part of the single currency. And so growth can only be really resumed through, back-breaking structural reforms to really transform the productivity potential of the whole economy.
Yeah, here's another chart. Mario Draghi speaking this afternoon. More and more we see Draghi presumed to take over for Trichet here after President Trichet's tenure at the European Central Bank. Credit default swaps, that's the abbreviation we use. Credit default swaps could feed a chain reaction. There is the spread chart of Greece and Germany. James Nixon, what is the SocGen, with your leadership in derivative research, what is the SocGen view of the credit default swap risk in Europe?
Well, there are really two questions here. I mean, I think what has got the market so concerned is the very aggressive sort of stance that Germany seems to have taken, pushing for something that may not be voluntary. And the ECB, for example, last week have made it absolutely clear that anything of that kind of look or smell that involves an element of compulsion will be probably treated by the market as basically a default. It'll be a downgrade, and that would be something that would be extraordinarily serious. I have to say that I think, Germany earlier today has already made clear that they have no intention of going against the advice of the ECB. So I think that risk is probably overstated in the market in the very short term. Again, the real risk, I think, in Greece, if we go back to what we've been talking about, is that we already see signs that even this year's programme is running into difficulty. They're falling behind their fiscal targets. Yeah. And so the challenge really is whether we'll still be here in 3 months' time, still talking about Greece's failure to adhere to its targets.
Let's leave it there. James Nixon, thank you for this summary. Very, very good.